Hello, everyone. How's it going on this Thursday? Diane says good. How about you, George? Good. Good to see a few faces. Misty's giving me the thumbs up. Good. All right. I apologize that I was a few minutes late, so we will just go ahead and jump in because we've got quite a bit to talk about today. I just first want to give a shout out to all of those who were involved in our interim presentations this week. And I sent this out via email, but we had several presentations to make to two different committees this week as it relates to updates on technology projects, updates on a market analysis that was done by DHRN, the status of legislation that we're working on, building projects that we're working on, and renovations that are being done, that are underway. There was a lot of information that the legislative committees were looking for. And I mentioned this in my email yesterday, but just want to say again today that it was so great to hear these legislators on these committees talk about what a great job our teams at GovOps are doing. And as I mentioned in my email, Representative Christopherson said he recognized that we have a lot going on and that our teams really didn't receive enough recognition for all that we do. So I wanted to make sure that I pass that along and let you all know that we do have legislators who see that and they are appreciative of that work, and just commend everyone for all that is going on within government operations. A quick update I just want to give on the Executive Director's Office. So as we have been working on the consolidation and becoming the Department of Government Operations, one of the things that we've done over the past year is to look at how other agencies are structured and how we're structured so that we can make sure that we are structured in such a way that we have support services to all 9 of our divisions instead of operating in 9 unique silos. And so we will be making adding some staff to the Executive Director's Office with the new fiscal year coming up. These are things that we talked about in the legislative session and received approval for, and a few other items that we're going to be, or individuals that we'll be adding. So just to give everybody a heads up there, as you know, we have 2 deputy directors in the Executive Director's Office. That's Mary Lee Richards and Chris Hughes. I think they're both on the line and they can wave hi. For those of you who don't know, we did hire Jake Hennessy back in December. I think he's out of the office today. Anyway, Jake's, oh, there he is. I see him waving. Okay. So Jake functions as the Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Government Operations. So he's been with us since December, and he's really working on coordinating with the individual division finance directors, and will also be helping us through the rate process this year, especially as we continue to move toward a more synchronized rate process throughout all of the ISS. And then in July, we will be adding an internal auditor and really an internal audit team. This is something that we've been missing at the department level overall, and something that the Office of the Legislative Auditor General has really encouraged us to have, having a team that's consistently looking into our own practices and such to make sure that we are meeting the purpose of statutes and that we have appropriate internal controls in place, et cetera. So we will be bringing that team on in fiscal year 23. And then we will also be hiring a communications director that will be working at the department level as well. We have a few divisions that have a communications individual on staff, and so they'll coordinate with those individuals. But that person's focus will be twofold. Number one, to make sure that we're putting in place communication strategies internally so that we're engaging and interacting with our employees better, and also that we're engaging with our stakeholders externally. And I mentioned in my email yesterday, one of the things we really want to focus on is doing a better job of telling our stories and sharing our successes, because we are really behind the scenes, so that the legislature knows what's on our plate. They know what we're accomplishing, that the governor's office is aware, that the agencies that we support have insight into the great things that our teams are doing. And so we'll be building up that communication strategy with that new individual, internally and externally. So you'll see some new faces join the Executive Director's Office over the next couple of months. Let's see, the next thing that I just wanted to briefly talk about, and because this came through the questions on the intranet, was the performance management plan. So we talked about this a little while ago, but HB 104, which was passed in this last legislative session, actually requires all state executive branch agencies to move to a performance-based model in fiscal year 2024. So we have been piloting that within government operations, and hopefully you all have seen that, where you're having more engagement and more interaction with your managers and supervisors, where you're getting feedback on what the goals are for your team and what personal goals you've set for yourself, and how your performance is measuring up based on those goals. And so hopefully you're having those interactions with your team members. It is not yet tied to any sort of compensation. We're just building the structure right now. So we will move to a performance-based system that is that's tied to compensation in that fiscal year 2024. And the reason why we're not doing it in fiscal year 23 is twofold. Number one, we're still piloting and working out kinks here. Number two, and a big part of it, is that HB 104, in addition to saying we need to move to performance management, also requires DHRM to come up with management and supervisor training, and requires all managers and supervisors in the state to take that training. And that training will be built around how to effectively manage and supervise in a performance-based environment. So how to set performance-based standards, and how to do performance evaluations, and how to work through any issues that employees are having, and how to do the scoring criteria and such. And we don't want to move to a performance-based model before we've trained our managers and supervisors. That's one thing we've really struggled as a state. And this is not just in GovOps, but across all state agencies, is we have this tendency to take our great performers and move them into management positions, which is wonderful, we should, but then never provide them with any training or tools on being a manager and how to take on those new responsibilities. So the questions that came up, number one was, I'm a supervisor and was wondering if we're going to do a pay for performance for next year. The answer to that is we'll continue with the pilot, but we won't officially move to pay for performance or performance management until the fiscal year 24. So we will provide you with the training and the tools and the UPM goals, et cetera, that you'll need in order to make that effective. And then the other question that related to that was, will this be applicable to all employees, or is it solely for the group listed in the recommended for discretionary performance-based targeted increases? The targeted increases were a separate thing. That was based on the analysis that DHRM did for all state employees, where they provided recommendations to the governor's office on specific targeted increases that should be given by title based on the distance that title was from the market. It's completely separate from pay for performance. So the performance management model, when it goes into effect in fiscal year 2024, will be applicable to all state employees, regardless of whether they were included in that targeted funding, regardless of whether they're at will or career service. It will apply across the board. So someone just asked, with all that HB 104 is doing, it isn't changing the career service status of the employees who are at will. That will be or will that be that status? So the only status changes that will happen with HB 104 is those who are currently career service status and are managers or supervisors. They will have the option to opt into an at-will status and receive a 5% pay increase to transition, to move from career service to at-will. I believe it's around 3,000 employees statewide that is impacted by that. Is that right, Jean? Around that. Okay, so so statewide, there's only about 3,000 employees that will be impacted by that. But the performance management model, that has nothing to do with whether you're at will or career service. It will apply to all state employees, regardless of your status. But again, more information will be coming out with that, because it includes this mandatory training that DHRM will be developing, and a model that each agency can utilize and then build and refine for their agencies. So nothing that you need to be worried about yet as far as fiscal year 23 coming up. We'll just continue as we have been, and we'll build those tools and make sure that we have provided plenty of training to our managers and supervisors across all state agencies, so that way we can make sure that it's implemented the way that it's intended. So hopefully that answers those questions. If you have additional questions on that, feel free to throw them in the chat, and you're always welcome to email me or Jean. Are you the one who's running point on HB 104 and DHRM?
Doggone it, Jenny, you let the cat out of the bag. Actually, it's a couple of us, Rebecca Parr and myself and Misty. But if anybody has a question, all they need to do is just go to the Employee Gateway, and there is an Understanding HB 104 link there. They can click on that. There are Q&As there, but there is also a submit a question button, and they can just submit that question via email, and we are happy to do that. And Misty's dropped that right into the chat right there. So
thank you, Jean, and thank you, Misty. To answer your question, has a new performance management tool been selected? No, HR is really just starting this out and building it out. So there's nothing set in stone at this point. Okay, and then the last topic I have before I turn some time over to some other individuals, I just wanted to let you know, if I didn't in the last town hall, one of the things that we're doing as a department is we are implementing Domo for project tracking across the department. And what we'll be utilizing that for is to track things that we need to accomplish based on legislation that was passed, any governor initiatives, or process improvement initiatives that we're working on across the department. So it's not going to include every single project that's going on. That would be way too extensive, but some of the bigger things that we're working on as an agency. Chris Hughes is working on building that out. He's working with each of the division directors to build those out. Our goal is to have that done and up and ready in July. And one of the things that we will make sure that we're doing for all GovOps employees is providing access to just the overall dashboard. We want to create transparency. So, for example, as an executive director's office, these are the key things we said we're going to be working on in Q1 of fiscal year 23, and you can see how we're progressing with those items. And you'll be able to see the dashboards for the different divisions, so that all of our employees know some of the key things that we're working on and how they're progressing, and can ask questions and just have some more insight into what we're working on as a department. So we're really excited to get that implemented. I saw a sneak peek today as Chris is building it out. It's looking great, and we're excited to roll that out next month and share that with all of you. So I'm going to stop talking, and actually we have a few people who we have on the agenda today. The first one is Rob Wallace with DTS. He chairs our policy committee, and he's going to give an update on that committee and some of the recommendations that have come through.
All right, thanks, Jenny. Let me see if I can get the screen to present. Let's see. There we go. Can you guys see this? Are you seeing the slide deck?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to talk about everyone's favorite subject, and that's policy, right? Jenny mentioned creating some communication channels and transparency, and this is another area in which we're trying to create some transparency and also an opportunity for everyone within the organization to provide some feedback. So what I'm going to go over today is just a high-level sketch of the committee and kind of how we're structured and what the process flow looks like for actually implementing policy or even changing policy. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the committee members. So we have Ken Williams from Archives and Corey Weeks, Mark Peterson, Rebecca Parr, John Gardner, and George McEwen. And that constitutes the policy committee body. And what we're responsible for is actually when policy suggestions come in from either the EDO or from you, we actually take the policy suggestions and we work with the executive directors of each division as well as the EDO to see if that's something that where we should enhance a policy or create a new policy. If you didn't know where to go to find policies, you can hit our intranet site, which, by the way, has had an overhaul. So if you haven't had a chance, go look at the new look We did a quick skin on it while we're waiting for the larger effort of transforming the agency website. But take a look when you get a chance. But you can go to the intranet site and you click on policies, and that's where you can see the GovOps policies. Now, you might be asking yourself, where's the department level or the division level policies? Each division has its own policies in some cases. So the DGO policies are the policies that apply to the entire agency. From a process flow standpoint, we want to take the mystery out of what the process is. So if you look at the first swim lane, we have input, and we have input from the committee members and the division directors and the EDO, but ultimately it's all the employees. So anyone that wants to make a recommendation can. In the review swim lane, the next swim lane down, that's where we have a committee review, and then the committee makes some recommendations. The division directors review those recommendations, and then it goes to the EDO for review. Now, if there's questions or concerns about policy, then we take this no path and it goes back to the committee review and we work on it again and resubmit. If we're ready to support a policy, then it comes down here to the next swim lane, which is implementation, is where we finalize the policy documentation and we actually put it on our intranet website. We also have a change management process, which is the last swim lane on the bottom, where we talk about the components of change management being how do we communicate? Is there training that needs to be involved? What kind of communication mechanisms do we need to employ, whether it's town hall meetings or manager stand-up meetings or what have you. And then we ask for feedback. So this is the part I want to talk a little bit more about, is this solicit feedback. We have the opportunity to solicit feedback that then goes back up here, through the gateway, and we can start this process over again. But let's look at what that actually entails. So on the intranet site, there is a place where you can tell us about any idea or policy that you would like to have more clarification on. So when you go here, you can actually just click on the box here, and you can follow the steps and submit your idea. And those will be reviewed internally, and we will get back to you. The other thing we have is we have feedback. So if you have feedback on something, such as a policy or anything for that matter, this is a catch-all area for feedback, but relative to policy as well. You can just go in here and you can submit your question here on the intranet site again, and that will go to the EDO. Now, if you don't like the form or you want to contact Jenny Merrily or Chris directly, you can also email them at dgoedo@utah.gov, and they will definitely get back to you. The last part that we want to talk about is we actually had someone submit a question around PIP eligibility. So for the leave bank policy, if someone's on a performance improvement plan, is that covered in the leave bank policy, and should they have access to the leave bank? So the consensus on the left there, you'll see, was that it's sufficiently written within the policy and associated with corrective action. And so the consideration that was made or was discussed was that the policy is not like annual or sick leave. It's really a discretionary policy, and we hope and expect that people are in good standing with the organization to take advantage of that. We do have a rare circumstance applying here too. And what that means is when we create policy, we try to create policy that supports the masses. We do have one-offs occasionally where we have to make an exception, but that can be made at a managerial level. This policy, as it is with all others, has a way or a path to make an exception. And there is an exception that can be made by the executive director. In this case, that's Jenny. And that can be made on a case-by-case basis if there is legitimate concern. So, that is, again, I wanted to make sure I emphasize that that's available for all policy. And last but not least, I wanted to just talk about policy in general. So I love this cartoon because it talks about policies being generated for the sake of making policy. we're trying to avoid that with this group, and we're trying to make sure that we make policies that make sense. We want to give the empowerment to management to make some discretionary decisions. Therefore, you won't see a policy as like in the Steelbook cartoon for having phone lists on your cubicle wall, right? Because it's just unnecessary. So policy will be, hopefully you'll find that it'll be relative to you, and that we also, place the emphasis back on managers when exceptions outside of normal policy need to be made. So any questions from anyone?
Someone asked about a software, or using a software to manage these policies. And it looks like George answered, it's Wallace Bot version 1.
Yeah, we're not using any kind of software at this point. We are managing it through the internal forms process that goes to a box, and then we actually categorize those. We put them on a list, and that list is a living, breathing document. We look at it every week, and the policy committee looks at what's being submitted, and the EDO as well, whatever comes through the EDO channel, and we have a discussion about it. So it's very timely. The response is very good, and I want you guys to know that your leaders within your divisions take great interest in creating policies that are relevant for all of us.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. And you may have said this, but I just want to emphasize that this particular policy request came through that ideas submission portal. And so having Rob here today, and we're talking about other ways too, we want to make sure that we're providing transparency to everyone. So if you are suggesting a change, whether it's policy or you have an idea, sometimes there can be a tendency if it just gets, push onto somebody, but there's no follow-up as to what happened with that recommendation. And we'd like to put in tools to say, here is a recommendation that came in, here's the process that went through, and here's the decision that was made, either accepting it or rejecting it, and the whys behind that. So people know that their ideas are being taken seriously, they're being considered, and that they have an understanding of where it's going and why. So, and I just want to express my appreciation to that policy committee. I personally, I cannot imagine having any funds going through policies and creating policies. So I appreciate that there are people out there who are willing to take on that job and do that for the department. Okay, thank you, Rob. So I'm going to turn some time over to Marilee. She is going to talk about compensation strategy across the department. You all did get an email from her a few weeks ago talking about this process that we're going through right now, and she's going to give you some additional information.
Thanks, Jenny. So I kind of wanted to talk about this because after my email, there were just so many questions. And that was really hurtful because I just thought I was so clear, and evidently it left a lot of questions. So if you have questions as I'm talking, feel free to put them in chat, and I'll try to pay attention to those. But there's been some concern that as we have put out this new process of all ASIs and incentive awards coming up to the EDO's office to approve, that would mean that there would be fewer ASIs, or that it would be harder to get an ASI, or that EDO was trying to stomp on the money being spent on compensation increases. And the truth is, it's exactly the opposite. So as we have been examining the compensation patterns in each of the divisions, we have really seen some inequities. We've seen some patterns that are concerning that we need to understand. For example, in some divisions, it's common not to receive an ASI for 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And in other divisions, it's common to have an ASI every year. We don't ever want an employee to feel like they are handicapped because of the division that they work in or how that division is funded. What we have seen, I wouldn't say in every division, but in many divisions, is that the way that we are planning for compensation tends to be, well, let's pay for everything else, and then let's see what's left and divide those crumbs among the employees. And that is our compensation strategy. And I'm here to tell you that is no strategy. So we need to begin to build a deliberate, intentional comprehension strategy. Now, keep in mind that I am talking specifically GovOps specific. So DHRM creates some guardrails for the whole state in terms of compensation, right? And then we take those guardrails, and each agency within those guardrails determines what our own compensation strategy is going to be. And so we just went through year-end ASIs. Doesn't mean that's the only time you can get an ASI, but it means there's a lot of ASIs and incentive awards that are given at that time. And what happened was, as I looked at each one of those ASIs, I went into your UPMs and I looked to see how those were documented. And I looked to see, do we have one employee who is getting an ASI, and in their UPM it says, you know, this team would fall apart without so-and-so, done an excellent job, stepped up, done all of this extra stuff. But I'm seeing other UPMs where that same thing is written and there's no action taken. So this is going to take us some time to work through. So please don't, I see some of you typing right now. So please don't send me email messages right now saying, yeah, I am the superstar of my team and I'm, getting nothing. This is going to take us some time to work through. And one of the big things we have to work through is the funding and how we move from a reactive compensation strategy to a proactive, deliberate, planned compensation strategy. So those are the things that we're going to be working on really deliberately over this next year. We're going to be working with the division directors, the finance directors. I think of, as we've taken these pulse surveys and as we've gotten other feedback from our employees, compensation is one of the things that we are hearing loudly and clearly. And you're not alone. I mean, we're hearing that across the state. I know that John Barron is saying, yeah, is there anything else we can talk about besides compensation? Because I think that dominates his everyday. But we're going to do our very best to address these concerns within GovOps and create a responsible, strategic, intentional plan. That's the goal. So are there questions?
So
What
there
are AA? What's that?
Couple that have come to the chat. What criteria should we be using to decide who we feel should get the ASI?
So those are some of the things that we need to begin to standardize over the department. So I will tell you right now that every division does it very differently. So those are the kinds of things I'm not prepared to answer that right now because we don't have that standardized process. And this will have a lot to do with this performance management process that we'll be going through with HB 104. So what I can tell you is that whether you work in DTS or DFCM or fleet or administrative rules or DHRM, the way that you receive ASIs, the foundational principles, should be similar.
And the next question, which I can take, it says, is any of the compensation going to take into account the above average inflation that is occurring currently? So we're talking about two separate things, really. An ASI is going to be based on the performance management model. It's not a cost of living increase. There was a cost of living increase that was approved in the last legislative session that goes into effect. Somebody from DHRM tell me.
Goes into effect June 25th, and it was 3.5%. And we will be taking into account inflation in our next recommendations for next year.
Okay, thank you, Misty. So Misty is our total rewards guru, and she's thinking about this day in and day out. So that will be part of what she is recommending to the legislature. I will say in the committee hearing on Tuesday that Misty presented to, one of the questions that, or several of the questions that came up were related to the understanding that not only are we in a recession, but there's the great resignation that's happening, and we have this crazy low unemployment. And so what are we doing as an agency to help with employee retention and recruitment and being more competitive with the private sector? And so that particular committee requested that DHRM come back in the fall with some recommendations on maybe finding ways to be more flexible, or just looking at different ways that we can address some of these compensation issues. And so that's something that John Barron and Misty will be working on and putting recommendations for and presenting, I believe sometime in the fall. We don't have an exact date yet, but I want to give some kudos to the legislature that I see that they're concerned about this, and they're asking for us to come back to them with feedback and with recommendations. And it's something that we will be doing. Marilee, anything else that you wanted to talk about in the compensation strategy?
No, other than to say, as we put together this strategy, I'm not talking like pie in the sky. I'm saying that this strategy will be something that we can write down and that we'll share with you. Like, this isn't going to be a secret. So once we have this put together, you will see this out on the internal website, so that you can see what that strategy is, what the constraints we have to overcome, what the time period is, what the expectations are of the divisions, all of those things you will be able to see. And that should really give some context to your own individual situations. Before I go on mute, I just also want to mention that these things that we're doing, these are direct results of what we're hearing out of these pulse surveys. So I cannot tell you enough how important those pulse surveys are. So now all the results of those surveys are listed out on the internal employee website. So you can see the results of every survey. It is my intention this week to go out on each of the surveys and list some of the discussions and some of the action items that are coming out of the results of those surveys. But I just want to give a plug for those. And, you know, I know there's a lot of you that feel like, I don't want to take another survey. They don't ever make any difference. And I'm telling you, you're wrong. They make a huge difference, and they're worth the 32 seconds it takes to fill that out. And now I will mute.
To know it was exactly 32 seconds. That was a very precise number.
32 seconds if you are on the ball and pay attention.
Okay, Marilee, 2 more questions for you. So with this written strategy, will we as employees have a clear view of what we need to do to qualify for an ASI funding dependent?
So I don't know what funding dependent means.
Meaning, of course, if there's going to be funds available to do this, will they know?
Gotcha. Yes, you should know what you have to do to qualify for an ASI. I think that's fair for every employee to know what to do. So, however, understand that we're talking about a whole performance management program, and that compensation strategy is going to be subservient to that performance management plan that we have been asked to put together for HB 104. But as an employee, you are the captain of your ship, and you should know and have a clear understanding of what it takes to be successful, both in terms of moving your career forward, in terms of moving financially forward. I feel like that's every employee's right to know how they can shape their future if they choose to shape their future.
Okay, and last one, how would this relate to promotional strategies as well?
So that will be part of it. And again, I think what you're talking about is career ladders and, you know, what it takes to get to the next place, what qualifications, understand there's soft skills and there's hard skills for most jobs. And yes, that is something that we're going to tackle. Just please understand, this is not like a 2-week kind of a thing to put together, but yes, that's part of an overall compensation strategy.
All right, thank you, Marilee.
I just again want to be really clear that what we're talking about is a GovOps strategy. So I want to be clear not to step on the toes of DHRM, because they do all of this for the whole state and they set general guidelines that we will absolutely adhere to.
All right, thank you. I'm going to turn a few minutes over to Melissa. Are you on the line, Melissa?
I am. I'm here. Can't see me, but I'm here. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what our next challenge is for the summer. We've created a scavenger hunt for everybody, and we are hoping that this will be a lot of fun and a challenge. We are going to highlight all the counties in Utah. We've partnered with our friends over at Utah Tourism, and we're also going to be promoting the Mighty Five program. So there'll be more information on the intranet about this, but basically we've created some hashtags. We've made this really simple for everybody to do. You can go out and see the hashtags on the intranet. We'll give you some places to check out. We'll give you some things to see. We'll give you some photo opportunities, and there's going to be prizes. So stay tuned. This will run from June through the 1st of September. And go to the intranet and look at it.
Thank you, Melissa. All right, last person on my list is Steve Cuthbert to give a brief update on these surveys.
So we just finished up a pulse survey, and those results will be on the internet probably next week. We're trying to do about 2 per month. And as Marilee said, we want these to be super quick so they don't take a long time for you to have to complete. Just for your information, we've been getting about 500 responses per survey, which is good, which is right where I think we want to be. I also want to, there was a question that came in on the survey that we just did, talking about, again, are they anonymous? I just want to reinforce that, yes, they are anonymous. They're not tracking anybody's IP address or anything like that. So you can feel comfortable with your responses. And I also want to just reinforce what Marilee was saying. We just asked the 2 quick questions. The questions are, they're always attached to one of the SEAT framework values. And so we'll be tracking those longitudinally to see how, if we're improving, hopefully on each one of those values. But the other thing is the comment. The third question is always a comment, which is free format that you can make. And I know EDO looks at those, we upload those into a spreadsheet and provide those for every survey as well. So if there's something that the questions aren't clear or you want to add something, please go ahead and add a comment. But we really appreciate everybody that's taken the time out to complete the surveys. And like I said, over time, we'll be providing a little bit more longitudinal data relative to each one of the SEAT framework values. But right now, you can go back on the internet and look at the responses and the results rather. And Marilee provides a link to those generally on each time we announce a new pulse survey. So yeah, there's just expect those to continue. Please jump on and fill them out when you see the announcement, and we just appreciate your participation in those.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet.
All right, that was everyone on my list. So I want to turn some time over for questions. I do first want to just say thank you to those who have turned on their cameras today. I have a screen full of faces, and it's so nice to feel like I'm actually talking to people instead of just a black screen. So thank you for that. One question that came up in the last two town halls that I want to make sure I don't forget to address, what is the question of how do I code my time if I am a remote worker and the internet goes out at my house or power or whatever the case is? I don't have an answer for that yet. This question is a lot more complicated than I ever anticipated it was going to be, but it is with the policy committee, and it is something that the policy committee is discussing right now. And we're talking to HR a bit about this as well. So we will have a policy about this and we'll get it out to you. I just don't have an answer yet. So wanted to make sure that you knew that we were working on that. Are the mileage reimbursement rates going to increase for fiscal year 23? Janica, or somebody from finance, John Ellis, are one of you on the line and wanted to address that?
If they're not, I can. Yes, mileage rates will go up. The feds upped their mileage rates, so the upper limit will be 62 cents and the lower will go up by the same number of cents. I can't remember what that one is.
And I just want to give a thumbs up to our finance team. Even though the IRS comes out with recommendations, it's my understanding that states have autonomy to keep it lower than that. And our finance team is moving forward with what the IRS says. So we appreciate that they're monitoring that and following that. Somebody asked, oh, Misty, can we remind everyone that it's a 3-day weekend? Yes, so Monday is a paid holiday for state employees. It is the first year that we will be observing the Juneteenth National Freedom Day. So Juneteenth is officially June 19th, and I'm trying to remember the exact legislation, but I think if it falls on a weekend, it's observed the following Monday, and if it's during the week, it's the previous Monday. I don't remember exactly. Maybe Misty can type that in there, but it will always be observed on a Monday. And for us this year, it's on June 20th. So it will be a paid holiday this year. Is daycare still a viable future option at TSOB? I know that's something that is still on the list of things that is being considered. And Marilee or Jim. Jim, do you want to talk about that one?
I didn't catch the first part. Something at TSOB, what project?
Is daycare still a viable future option at TSOB?
That's a complicated issue because, and I think teleworking made it even more complicated because we have people moving in and out. And, you know, so there's the, could we create the space? Yes. Who would manage the program and how would it be managed, and how would a provider there would have to be some funding source to supplement this because as you know, if you do daycare, you need a commitment for your child to be there every day, and that would be problematic for teleworking and so forth, and it would probably be more convenient for drop-in. So that there hasn't been a lot of conversation about that recently. Certainly something that we could look at providing the space for in the future. And we did have discussions with Workforce Services on possibly managing and operating that if we did do that. But it's something that's just still, you know, out there on the radar.
I think to Jim's point, I just want to, one of the things I want to add as well, and Jim, you're welcome to talk more about this, but when TSOB was originally built or renovated, it was pre-pandemic, but with the understanding that we were moving to a hybrid type workforce. And then the pandemic happened, and now we are recognizing that there is far more ability to work remotely than was expected or anticipated before the pandemic. And more people are choosing that option and working remotely more than we thought back in 2019. And so one of the conversations that Jim's team is having right now is, do we need to reconfigure the space even more to allow more agencies to come over to TSOB, because we just don't need as many buildings across the state in general as we had up until the pandemic because of remote work. And so part of it is an ongoing conversation too of who is going to be at TSOB and how many of those employees are going to be working remotely, and what will the demand be for these types of services. Okay, someone says, if you are permanently working from home and asked by the customer to participate in meeting for a week, would mileage be available from home to the meeting site? This is all going to, as it relates to mileage and the telework policy, the telework policy is so close to being done. I think we just have one final piece to finalize. And I believe we have it on our calendar for early next week to talk about. Is that right, Marilee? Early on our, so I am very hopeful that that telework policy will be released by the end of this month. And that will clarify and address all of these questions as far as it relates to mileage, especially if you are a remote working employee. So stay tuned for that. We'll make sure that that gets sent out because I know that's a topic that's on a lot of people's minds. We'll make sure that that one actually gets sent out to everybody once it's finalized and ready. Someone asked about the annual state park passes for employees, and if we get them, we can include state parks in the scavenger hunt. So when I asked about that, I was told that as of right now, that's not something that the state is considering. The state parks are struggling. They have a lot of funding needs, and so as a state, we're the second largest employer in the state. So cutting back that revenue for state parks, they would have to make it up some other way, and they don't have a way to do that right now. So as far as what I'm being told, that's not something that they're looking at offering at this point, but it is something that they are asked about frequently and is on their mind. So so as of right now, there aren't free annual park passes for employees. Someone asked,
Included in the scavenger hunt, so don't forget about them.
what's that?
State parks are included in the scavenger hunt, so don't forget to go there.
Oh yes, that will be one of the prizes that we give out. TISA daycare could serve the other state office buildings too, right? Yes, if there was a daycare option, it would be available to all state employees regardless of what building they were at. And I know that was, or earlier on, that was one of the conversations that I think even UDOT was involved in because they have employees that are next door that could benefit from that as well. So yes, it wouldn't be just TSOB employees who would benefit. George, thank you. Veterans with 50% disability rating or higher can get a free annual pass. So if you were a veteran and meet that qualification, then please apply for that. Is the scavenger hunt the summer event this year? The answer to that is no, but Melissa, do you want to give any more insight there? I know you're still talking about that a little bit. Maybe we don't have a lot of information to give yet.
So we are still working on it. We are putting a committee together to work on that. But if you have any ideas or suggestions of what you would like to see as a summer event for GovOps, send them on over to me and I will bring them forward to our committee and we'll talk about it.
Thanks, Melissa.
I think this is a great opportunity to give a shout out to the Talent Engagement Committee. This committee is led by Brian Nelson and has Brian, we have a person from each division, don't we?
Actually, I'm just waiting for two appointments from two divisions, and I'm working with the division directors to fill that. So I want to get that committee scheduled together like ASAP so that we can get that feedback and start planning the event. And it will be, let me just say, it will be employee planned and suggested. So we really look forward to having that committee put together, but I'm hoping to have a meeting no later than next Tuesday. But again, I'm just waiting for two more slots to be filled. And I won't say which divisions those are, Jenny.
I was just gonna say, I fully admit I was not the cool kid in high school. I'm not the cool kid now. Nobody wants to go to a party that I planned. So I am grateful that the Talent Engagement Committee is taking that on. And actually, I would like, if we haven't talked about this before, Brian, if you would maybe take 1 or 2 minutes and just talk about the Talent Engagement Committee, because it's beyond this party. This is an employee-led committee that will be focused on a variety of things.
Happy to do that, Jenny. This is a committee, again, that will be populated by a representative from each division, not in leadership, not a manager, but it will be those of you who really make us all look good and really help us come together with some ideas for some activities. But the principal purpose of this committee is to address issues of morale, engagement, training, development, and the types of things that really can affect the well-being of any organization. But it's an opportunity, this committee, we view this as an opportunity to help make this the best place to work. And so we really, really appreciate those who've served. It's been a long-standing committee prior to in Department of Administrative Services, and we're really reinventing it, resurrecting it, if you will, in GovOps with some new and fresh ideas with new appointees. So we really appreciate all of the time, and we meet frequently to really keep these things moving and be on top of things. So what we do as a committee is we study issues or threats, concerns, and then we make recommendations up to EDO and suggestions. And we also are involved in selecting award nominees, for example, for the Governor's Awards for Excellence. So it's a really fun group where we get to be innovative and thoughtful and really work hard to make the department even better than it already is.
Thank you, Brian. Question, do we have any updates on internet discounts yet? And I am confident the answer to that is no, but Chris, I think, was that something you were going to look into? Or maybe it was Wendy.
Sorry, for which up? Yeah.
I can speak to that with regards to the internet discounts. So we have actually started canvassing a lot of the current existing contractors that we have on state cooperative right now with regards to who actually even provides those kinds of services. And then we're finding some very mixed answers, but we've actually also started getting some information from some other states that have been looking at doing something similar. So we're hoping to be able to get an RFI out in the next couple of weeks to be able to really understand what this new kind of category of internet provided services looks like. And also obviously being engaging with DTS as well with regards to the technical components and aspects on that. So hopefully we should have some more information by the next town hall.
That would be great. Thank you, Wendy. For those who don't know, Wendy is the Chief Procurement Officer for the state of Utah. So she oversees the procurement of products and services. A few recommendations on the summer party. I love it. If you don't mind sending some ideas to Melissa, she can be the gatekeeper for all of that. I will tell you, Jake Hennessy came from Health and he told me what Health did and I was jealous. And so we're looking at other fun things that we can do, especially as a department with a department of our size. So send those suggestions to Melissa and she will make sure that they get sent to the Talent Engagement Committee. Any other questions?
Jim Russell, when is the pickleball court going in?
Is this the one that we're building at your house? You
Come
weren't
on, dude.
supposed to tell anybody about that. Now everybody's going to want one.
I have yet to play pickleball. I hear it's fun, but I haven't done it yet. Oh, Sherry's all over that idea.
Just two things that, if you don't mind, that I know people have asked me about recently. We're hoping that the driveway on the north end will be open tomorrow, but surely by Monday, so that you can come back in that way again. And then there was a little confusion on the solar canopy project in the north parking lot. That only impacts those that are parking in the north parking lot right now. So there'll be construction over there for solar canopies that's being installed under a Blue Sky grant with Rocky Mountain Power.
Jim or Andy, whoever wants to take it, question on the status of the fitness center.
I have no idea. I think we're still trying to find somebody to run it, or a committee to run it, but I don't know. Andy's on vacation. He would
Andy's on
probably.
vacation. Okay, so we will.
Is Greg on this call? Maybe he knows. Greg Uber.
Looks like no. So we will, I'm writing that down right now. We will follow up and send an email out on that one. A question, Jim, will electric charging stations be open during the solar canopy construction?
Yes, they should be. The area that you see right now that's kind of coned off, that will be kind of the impact area. That's one thing I wanted to check on this morning to make sure that the driveways will still be open, but yeah, you should have access to those. And I think there was a question about how that will impact the building that's over there in the future. Those canopies may be in the fenced compound where Fleet and and surplus property will be in there. And if that's the case, then they'd be usable by fleet for vehicles over there. The project is going in because of the grant to supplement and provide renewable power here at the building. And we have an option of doing it by many different means. We could put it on the roof, we can put it on the ground, or we can put it on a canopy. And we pretty much always opt to put it on a canopy where it's dual purpose.
Thanks, Jim. So for those who don't know, Jim is the division director of the Division of Facilities and Construction Management. And Chris Bramwell just volunteered to run our fitness center. So we're going to call him. I may have added a few more words to what he actually volunteered for, but we'll pull him in to help there.
That's
Oh,
great.
and then
I know
what's
they're
that?
working, I know Alan, or not Alan, well, you'd hate me to have said that. Mike Kelly was working on some legal aspects of the entity that needs to be established to be able to, you know, handle fees and maintenance and so forth. So I think it's probably still sitting in that and getting a committee together.
Okay, so we'll follow up there. And then just as an FYI, for people who don't know, as Jim was talking about the building, a new building will be built in that parking lot area over there, with the prison and Draper coming down. Our current surplus building is located at that site, and so we need to vacate that site. So we will be building a new surplus and fleet building in that parking lot area over by the electric charging stations. So if you see construction starting on that, that's what that is. All right, well, we are at noon. So I just, again, want to express my appreciation for everyone who comes to these. I hope that they're helpful. If you have any questions that we didn't respond to or that come up in the meantime, always feel free to email any of us. We're happy to answer questions. If you have ideas for the summer party, send those over to Melissa, and we'll chat again next month. Thank you.